Hello, I'm Nan Simonsen. I'm a board certified, nationally board certified health and wellness coach. And I just finished a, well, a most excellent adventure. And I'm about to share that with you. I took part in a, I'll say group led by Dr. Brooke Goldner, called her Goodbye Lupus. And it's actually called her 6-week rapid recovery group program. And this was the second time I had done the protocol, the only time I had done it under her tutelage. And I have been doing videos all along about once a week to share my takeaways. Now I am going to present my experience in general for the 6 weeks. And I'm going to do it in a bit of a fun way, in that I am going to do a PowerPoint. So here we go. Let me get to that. And let me give it a start. And here we go. Welcome to my most excellent adventure in Dr. Brooke Goldner's 6-week rapid recovery group. I want to introduce my husband. This is Timothy Mark Kelly, and we were in the kitchen of Rancho La Puerta, and we were taking a cooking class overseen by Chef AJ. I had actually been there 3 times as her sous chef. This time my husband went with me. And this slide reminds me to say to you that I have been whole food plant-based since the fall of 2018. It took Tim maybe a month to jump on board, but by the beginning of January of 2019, we were both whole food, plant-based, and haven't looked back. During the year of 2019, while I was whole food, plant-based, it was remarkable how many things cleared up. High cholesterol, high blood sugar. I was actually labeled as pre-diabetic, so of course I was sent to an endocrinologist, and my lipids were very high. My cholesterol was very high, so I was sent to a cardiologist, and I had microscopic colitis, so I was seeing a gastroenterologist. And every one of them, when they said, let's give you a pill, argued with me when I said I'm going to try food first. So I got her book. She wrote this book, I believe, in 2017, Goodbye Lupus. This is Dr. Brooke Goldner. And I bought it in 2019. I barely remember, though, because I didn't do the program. As a matter of fact, I read the book and I added a number of things, including doing smoothies, but not as a protocol and not with the rigor that I later learned to do it. As a matter of fact, let me go back. I began her 6-week program with rigor in September the 2nd, when just the week before, my doctor said to me, considering your numbers, you may want to work on this, and I recommend her Goodbye Autoimmune program. Well, he pulled out his computer. Well, they always have them on their lap, at least now. And he said, she has a program coming up in October. I said, I will be out of state up in the mountains in New Mexico without Wi-Fi for a good part of the time. So I started it 3 days, 4 days later on my own, and I did 6 weeks from the beginning of September 2nd, through the middle of October. Well, coincidentally, 3 weeks into my being on her protocol, I was at a international plant-based healthcare conference, and with Chef AJ. She was rooming with me. And when we were connecting on the phone before we met that evening, she said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to have someone sitting with us. It's Dr. Goldner, Dr. Brooke Goldner." And I was thrilled because by then I was all over the books that she had written because I was on the protocol. Isn't she wonderful? 47, and she looks like she's 20 or 30 years old, coming from a place for, what was it, 16 years, 15, let's see, from 16 to, oh, I don't know what age. I believe it was 12 years, with the predictions that she would never be able to have children and probably die young or be on dialysis because of lupus, nephritis, which meant the kidneys were involved. But she was there with us for that meal, and she spoke the next day about her program. And I ended up, well, I'll tell you what I ended up doing. But first of all, after that 6 week period, on my own. I had a torn meniscus that happened shortly after I did a half marathon, but I don't believe it had anything to do with that. Maybe it weakened it a little bit, but about a year before I tore, it was a complex, multiple, bilateral uh, meniscus tear. And so it was pretty serious. It took about a year and I was still in pain. Didn't expect anything to change in terms of that. But on her protocol, it was 90% down in pain. I thought the pain was gone because I didn't want to admit when I had little twinges of pain. I thought, well, I'll live with that forever, considering what it was. Shoulder and elbow pain gone, rheumatoid factor down 8 points. Everything was going in the right direction. Thyroglobulin down 18 points, and an erythrocyte sedimentary rate that I was told by three rheumatologists, they work with autoimmune diseases, they couldn't lower, they weren't sure why, was absolutely normal. I also lost 4 pounds, which I hadn't even thought about, but hey, I would take it. So I stepped down and continued the hypernourishment part, and you'll hear more about that in a bit, and my whole food, plant-based diet. Within 3 days, I joined a family of our eight family, or I joined eight family members on a vacation in New Mexico. And that was us because by then it was getting close to, well, it was Halloween. These were dinosaurs, and Tim and I on either side, because we didn't have the costumes, just got a hat on and called ourselves dinosaur hunters. This is his two girls who are a year apart. The short one is the older one, and they were at that time, what, 32 and 33, and this was their children. Did I bring my Vitamix with me in order to hypernourish with a smoothie, which I consider the easiest way to do it? You bet. I brought my Vitamix, the bottom, I brought with me across and carried with me in my check-on, and the, no, with, carry on, and I checked in the part that had the blade, which was the upper part. And the entire time I made smoothies. I would stop. We got there, went to the nearest Trader Joe's because I'm used to what they have available in organic greens, spinach, the shredded kale, and the other items that they offer. And the smoothie recipe, you can go to smoothieshred.com. It's free, and find a mass of smoothie recipes. But in general, it's 75% of the power greens, the kale and the spinach and chard, and 25% fruit, which can be frozen. The greens must be raw and must be fresh. And I'm going to give you a secret here. It's by volume, not weight. But for example, my smoothie, well, you'll see even numbers on the scales that I'll show you. If I put in a pound of greens and just crammed them in there, I could put a pound of fruit. And what it looks like is 75% greens, 25% fruit. An exception might be cabbage. You'll see that I do a red cabbage smoothie. Cabbage is so dense, it doesn't quite have that volume and that way of eyeballing it. Her book, Autoimmune Disease, was written after she and her husband began doing these training sessions with people, and it became clear it wasn't just the food. It had so much to do with lifestyle and mindset that she wrote this book and included chapters on the things that hung people up that she would then recommend they do to resolve it. So if somebody said, but Nan, I would love what you're saying to me. I want this most excellent adventure, but it's not in our budget. I would say read her books and be sure to read those chapters carefully and do the work. Actually, take her recommendations and do the work. So, the most a most excellent adventure. I've always loved that line, came from this 1989 movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And Ted, right there, was the one who would say, "This is a most excellent adventure," all the time with their very campy language. Was it always fun? No. There were times that it was harrowing and that it was hard. And you know what? So is the 6-week rapid recovery group. Oh, if you're wondering what happened to Keanu Reeves, he got 2 gorgeous cats. Never mind that he also developed into quite a successful actor as well as someone that's easy on the eyes. All right, daily log. This is a big deal. We were asked not to show or produce anything that we reproduce, that we actually got on the program, but I can show you these fuzzed out copies of the log sheets. And this is my backyard, and sitting down, filling in my log on the warmer mornings or evenings and keeping my logbook was a major part of the factor of success in this program. If somebody stopped working the program because at times it was hard and stopped doing their logs, in essence, they were losing track of what they were accomplishing, and if not accomplishing, why? Because it was all there on the logs. What did the logs represent? In general, we rated ourselves for mood, energy, pain, swelling. Those who also wanted to lose weight could monitor themselves for weight by weighing daily, starting with a starting number and a starting waist size, and people saw that melt away. Also, blood pressure and blood sugar, if people were there for reasons of diabetes or vascular problems. We were taught self-care. I'll talk more about that. But in that realm, we recorded what we did every day as it related to exercise, meditation, bliss activities, which I'll again explain. High nutrient, raw, fresh veggies. We recorded that every day. And by the way, we took photos of what it was we were eating on the scale so that, for example, I knew that I was getting, based on the weights on the scale and the photo, what my goal was, what the goal of most of us was, depending on our health when we began, 1.5 pounds of deep leafy greens. We could also have unlimited amounts of non-starchy vegetables, and those we listed, fresh or frozen fruit. We had a maximum on those because although they're nutritious, they're not a healing food to the degree that the high nutrient, raw, fresh vegetables were. And those were the kale and the spinach and the bok choy and the collards, and again, cruciferous vegetables. Pure water every day. Our goal of most, not everyone, depending on their health status, was 96 ounces of water or more. Many people were drinking a gallon or more of water. Why? Because it helped the whole process. It helped speed up metabolism, but it also helped keep whatever was happening in the body in terms of the mechanics of breaking down fat, of hypernourishing the cells and the autophagy involved there of sloughing off the dead cells would happen easily with enough water to move things along. Omega-3 fatty acids, chia and flax seeds are the most abundant in the plant world, or flaxseed oil, and a half a cup of chia and flax, which is what I had every day, could be attained with 3 tablespoons of cold pressed flaxseed oil or chia. Flax is the one that you can usually find. And I'll show you how I used the oil on a regular basis, although I had the chia and the flax daily in my smoothie. Food off plan. We were to write that down. And if we went off plan, we wrote down what went wrong. And when we wrote down what went wrong, we then wrote a new plan to help us not have that happen again. Do you see what I mean by the work? You put in the work and it works if you work it. And then celebrations. That was a big deal. And I'll tell you what happened later when I was assigned the, given the assignment to write 5 things every day that I did right. 5 things that made me feel accomplished. And I took that also to be 5 things that I was excited and grateful for. So I did a number of writing projects, which I wasn't used to. And this was daily evaluating what was happening in our lives for 6 full weeks. Yes, I used the smoothie method. When Dr. Goldner healed herself with this method of lupus after 12 years, she did it with the vegetables in these amounts, but she did it eating them raw in their whole form. What they found when they started working with people was that some people just didn't want to or couldn't get it down. And they came up with the idea of making smoothies. Smoothie Shred was then born, and they offered their recipes to show people how. This is me looking into the bottom of my blender, and I use a Vitamix into my blender container. And this is how I started it. And by the way, here's a tip for you. Somebody at one point asked Dr. Goldner on one of her free, and every Wednesday she does this, 12:30 Pacific time, question and answer sessions. This is her giving back to, we'll say, the public. Somebody said, how do you keep the seeds from sticking all over the sides of the blender? This was the best way I found to put them in the bottom of the blender. And I season every smoothie the way I like, which is I use a lime, I use ginger, and I use turmeric. The turmeric less for the flavor, but more for the benefits of turmeric. It's not part of the protocol, but it wasn't disallowed. And then I throw in a little bit of ground pepper, about 1/8 of a teaspoon, to make the turmeric more bioavailable. And then I put it on and I'll back up. I could have used, instead of half a cup, and I just mixed together flax and chia and did a half a cup of that. Instead of that, I could have used 3 tablespoons of flaxseed oil, or a couple of tablespoons and then another tablespoon, but the two equal each other. Actually, from what I remember hearing, don't quote me on this, but 3 tablespoons is more equivalent to, I think it was 3/4 of a cup of flax and chia. But either way, one can do one or the other. It has to be cold pressed. Look at the ingredients, and nothing but the flax seeds, again, ground up. So here's the greens. Once I put the container on the scale, zeroed it out, even though there was already what I showed you in there, and then I packed in the greens. And this is 1.04, 1 pound, 4 ounces. So in other words, 16 ounces. And in my case, I pretty well use half spinach, half kale, and meaning about 12, 13 ounces, and the last few ounces as broccoli. And this is a really good example of the 75-25%. This is 1 pound of greens. This is 1 pound of fruit. And the fruit I used was banana, about 8 ounces. And then the rest was some mango and some strawberry and some pineapple and some, I guess that would be it. All frozen because I want the smoothie cold. I even had cold water in the refrigerator. Plus, I would put ice and water in a glass to get the water as cold as possible. Possible. You can see how I stocked up on bananas and I waited for them to get nice and dark before I froze them because then they're sweeter that way. And one can one of the Vitamix containers, let me take you back to that. This line right about here is 64 ounces. So this container, I have the Ascent series. This container holds about 94 to 96 ounces all the way to the top. You saw how I actually blended all the way to the top. That gives me a lot of smoothie. So a third of it I put into my stainless steel carafe that keeps it nice and cold through the day. A third of it I put in each of these two almost 4 cup containers that I could have used glass jars. Some people don't use plastic for anything. I have these in big stacks, and so I continue to use them. They're Tupperware. And how do I make sure I get my 96 ounces or more? I was averaging a little more than 100 ounces a day, and I'm small. I'm 5'2", and I was still downing, and still am, 100 ounces of water a day. First of all, at least 2 of these, which is 14 ounces each, so that would be 28 ounces right there. One of these at least, and that's 22 ounces, but quite often I would do 2 of them, which would be 44 ounces. And then the tall carafe had, well, all of the smoothie gave me an additional 42 ounces to 40, well, actually, more like 46 to 48 ounces of water a day because the water used in the smoothie could count. And with that big Vitamix carafe, I measured 1 quart and then I could pour in at least another 16 ounces and that would bring it to 48 ounces and blended it. Okay. There's my green smoothie and there's my beauty. Isn't that pretty? That is 13 ounces of red cabbage and the rest of the pound, which is another 3 ounces of either kale or spinach with the ginger and the lime and some turmeric. Love that smoothie. This is the equivalent of, look at you can barely see it. This is 1 pound, almost 6 ounces of veggies. This is how Dr. Goldner did it and did it with guacamole. And when I traveled to New Mexico, I would have my smoothie, but quite often when other people had their meal, I would simply bring with me, if we were going to one of well, to the one who lives in Albuquerque, to her house, because that's where our Airbnb was when we weren't up in the mountains. I would just bring guacamole and I would simply sit and dip and eat. Really good. That's no sacrifice. And I told you I would tell you what I did with the oil. Flaxseed oil, I can say, I liken it to axle grease. It's thick, it coats things, and it has a rather strong flavor. Dr. Goldner isn't crazy about it. I've come to like it, but she has said no, she's not crazy about the flavor. As she described it and said some people really like it. She just wasn't one of them. And I make a dressing, and I can tell you it very quickly. It's a ratio of 1 to 1 to 1 of the flaxseed oil, cold pressed, Bragg's liquid aminos, and lemon juice. So I tend to make a nice sized jar of it with a half a cup, a half a cup, a half a cup of each. Half a cup of oil, half a cup of lemon juice, and half a cup of Bragg's liquid aminos. I then put in about a teaspoon of Dijon mustard and a finely chopped garlic and an immersion blender to blend it up. And it still separates, but I love the flavor. It has a real kick to it and it's rather salty, but the salt on her program, she is adamant to make people understand becomes necessary when people are drinking a gallon of water or more, or they could become hyponatremic, which means that they develop an imbalance in their electrolytes, especially sodium, because they're washing it all out with water and not replacing it. So she recommends at least a teaspoon of salt a day. And this dressing I carry with me everywhere I go that I'm going to be eating and don't want to have to just resort on lemon juice or plain vinegar. I bring my own dressing with me. Now, is this as strong in omega-3 fatty acids as it is when I grind up chia seeds or use it right out of the bottle? No, because the omega-3 fatty acids are highly volatile. And when you put them in a dressing and you shake them up and they're sitting there like this one is, showing off in the light of day, the omega-3 fatty acids are, I'll say incalculable in that you don't really know how much is still in there. And so this is not counted toward omega-3 fatty acids on her protocol. So I still did it, but it wasn't that I could show it as this additional omega-3 fatty acids that would be on my log. When I was at that particular restaurant, which is a vegan restaurant, one of the purest, cleanest vegan restaurants I've seen, the option for the salad is roasted veggies. Well, I called and I said, I want the veggies on my salad, but I don't want them roasted. Would you just give them to me raw? And they said, sure, just remind us every time because we ordered in and then drove the 20 minutes to get there. And I was getting an average of 5 to 5.5 of the cruciferous vegetables, which is what they roasted, and brought my scale because remember, on the program, you take a picture of what you're eating, and all of that goes into the log so that by the end of the day, my goal was always to have 24 ounces or more, which is 1.5 pounds of cruciferous vegetables. Okay. Or cruciferous and deep leafy green vegetables. Now, did this lettuce count? No, this is spring mix, and that doesn't have the same, first of all, it probably, even though that looks like a lot of lettuce, was no more than 2 ounces. You'll see what I mean when you start weighing lettuce. But I had everything else in there, and all of this was on plan, including the flax crackers that are in the background. Many of us said those saved us. They gave something crunchy, salty, almost decadent to have with salads or cold soups, and you'll see what I mean by a cold soup. Then things got a little interesting because within 3 days of starting Dr. Goldner's protocol, I was in my son's casita. He lives on a peninsula in the Pacific called Palos Verdes Estates, and I needed to be there because I was going to be seeing a surgeon. We were removing 2 actinous keratosis, which were little marks on my face that were precancerous, dry, scaly skin. And this was looking toward the house from the casita. So I was there 4 days because of this. When they proposed taking the keratosis off, one was right here and the other one was back in the back side of my jaw. I was asked if I wanted to just do the whole face to blend it. And I said, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know what I was talking about because basically they just fried off my face. This was a couple of days after, but it got worse. I was unidentifiable and it hurt. And every 2 hours, I had to put compresses on it with an acetic solution so that it kept it from becoming infected. But did I stay on plan for those 4 days? Of course. I brought my blender with me to my son's house. He had a Vitamix, but it didn't have the same size carafe, and I was used to my 96-ounce smoothies. I brought my scale. I brought my cutting bowl that I do my chopped salads in because glass doesn't scratch the way metal would. And so this was me measuring the green and cruciferous vegetables and measuring the cauliflower that I was going to add to it. And these were the chopped non-starchy vegetables that I didn't have to weigh, but I added them all to the salad with avocado and or dipping of guacamole, and this is my salad. I still do this to this day. I make a salad now, I did it today, that was well over a pound and a half. Actually, it was it a pound of cruciferous? No, it was actually 2 pounds total with everything, a little less than a pound of the cruciferous chopped up. I have a chopping tool and I've done a demo on this, and then split up, one for lunch, one for dinner. Makes my meals so easy. I could instead just have guacamole and cut up vegetables. I find that really fun to eat. And it's like going to a party and eating their entire crudité platter. Why not? Especially when you have guacamole to dip it in and the flax crackers. Now, instead, I can make Dr. Goldner's flax crackers from her cookbook. I happen to like these because they're thicker and they are crispier. Hers are thinner and a little less crisp, but this would be a lot less expensive. One of the things I found that was so delicious is sliced tomato, guacamole, and a bit of the crisp cracker. That was a treat. And what I want to say about this is that a treat becomes something that you fall in love with when you're not overdoing or eating I was going to say eating at the trough. Okay, here comes my lecture. I'm convinced that our society has become a society of people that are on a free fall as it relates to eating. Anything goes. I go to restaurants and I see what's being promoted, what's being sold, what's being consumed by families, and it's appalling what they're calling food now. This is real food. When you don't have that other stuff, deep fat fried with cheese on top of that and bacon on top of that and white bread on top of that, in other words, the addictive food, this becomes irresistible. Can't wait for my next plate of tomato flax crackers and guacamole. Now I'm back home. Now, how do I know that? Because that's my trug. That is my typical fruit trunk that's loaded with a variety of fruit usually, but here it's loaded with what I end up using in my smoothies, the limes and the avocados, or in my dipping plates. We've got some oranges in there as well and some kiwi. So goodbye lupus, hello delicious, I found to be irreplaceable. Both the first time I did the program on my own, except that the cookbook, no, I take it back. The cookbook didn't come out until this year, or was it last year? Oh, shoot, now I don't remember. In any case, I couldn't do without it. I really enjoy the cookbook, even though now I must admit I don't take the time to do a lot of these things. I'm pretty well sticking to simple. But out of the cookbook, this is zucchini cannelloni. Ooh, it was good. And this is pesto over raw. And remember, everything's raw. And so everything is either room temperature or cold. And this was pesto over raw asparagus. I discovered I'm not crazy about raw asparagus, even though a friend of mine said, "Oh man, I've discovered something fabulous, raw asparagus." I didn't agree, but I used the pesto over chopped raw zucchini, and I loved it with the tomatoes on it. Oh my gosh, delicious from the recipe book. Collard wraps, just delicious. This is zucchini, raw, spiralized zucchini with a raw, very fresh flavored tomato sauce. This is a hand wrap using Dr. Goldner's tomato wraps. Now, this is my um, uh, dehydrator, and I'll tell you that I tried them 3 times, and the cooking time, dehydrating time in the book doesn't give me the amount of density and firmness that I find works well for me. So I cook them an extra 5 to 8 hours in the dehydrator, which is no big deal, and then store them in plastic and make these wonderful little hand wraps out of it. It's fun to eat out of your hands as if it was a sandwich when you are high raw. The cookbook is loaded with salads. This one is a mango crunch salad, and this one is a citrus salad. And you notice a lot of avocado. Yes, you can have avocado. Does it keep you from losing weight? No. First time on this program, I lost 4 pounds. Well, I won't spill the beans before I tell you this time, but it wasn't as much, but that's not what I was trying to do. This is a beet salad, a fresh beet salad, just delicious. And this is a cold cucumber avocado soup. Again, refreshing, fresh flavored, and very, very tasty. When I went anywhere that I was going to be out for a long period, for example, went to see my grandsons in their variety of games, soccer and baseball, this bag held a pound of cruciferous and other vegetables, and I would bring guacamole with me and some flax crackers, and I would be as happy as the person sitting next to me with a hot dog and fries on their lap, and actually know I would live longer if I kept it up and they kept it up. And it's easy if somebody is saying, I'm not doing all this stuff. Well, then fine. Just get a bag. For example, shredded cabbage. I always recommend organic. This shows that it's 4 ounces. No, it's a 9 ounce bag. I'd already taken some out of that. And put in the dressing and enjoy coleslaw. It's really, really tasty, and you can keep it for days. This is another super popular recipe, and this is buttered popcorn. That's what it's actually called. What this is flax oil with nutritional yeast and some turmeric and some salt that you dip cauliflower in. And when I first heard about this, and I hadn't tried it, I thought that looks weird. I heard somebody on one of her question and answer days say, is it okay if I eat an entire pound or more of cauliflower? I can't stop when I'm eating the popcorn, buttered popcorn. I thought, well, maybe I'll try that. And I did the same thing, an entire head of cauliflower. It was so good. Kale chips, right out of the cookbook. Dessert, like chia pudding. This, I believe, was a raspberry chia pudding. And Alex's candy. This is bananas and cacao. I love them. I freeze them. I put in silicone ice cube trays. I put these little candy papers. You can get these online. That's for people who make candies or just want to make them look frilly, and put it into the little holes of the ice cube tray and then spoon in his candy. And I did it today. I'm sitting here with a glass of rooibos chai tea, and I had 2 of those after my salad today, and it felt decadent. And sometimes, because there's a chocolate pudding as well, one of Alex's recipes, I'll put some chocolate pudding, and it's cacao, and there's no sugar, and it's on protocol, a couple of, or half a banana thin sliced, and then the putting on that, yes, that is part of protocol with my tea, and I feel like I've had a decadent dessert. Other things that I recommend to kind of fill you up and as a good snack are the crackers and a pico de gallo. This one's from Trader Joe's. And yes, it's 100% on protocol. This is a tomatillo salsa that's made at a little store near me. I've seen the ingredients, and yes, it's on protocol. It's just tomatillo and lime, no oil. We can have up to a glass of almond milk unsweetened a day. And a special treat for me in the afternoon would be an ounce of blueberries, that's what that is, and a glass of almond milk. Keep it simple. Now, that was the food, people. This program was so much more than the food to me. All of us have been on diets. I did Weight Watchers. A number of you know I had an eating disorder for 50 years. I was bulimic. And I went to all of the programs, Overeaters Anonymous, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, thinking maybe I'd get a handle on it or at least be led in a direction that I could follow when I felt so directionless. And I know how to do a quote unquote diet. And I did that really well in this program. That wasn't the hard part. The hard part was dealing with, let's just say, emotions and mindset. As a matter of fact, anyone who stopped the program said this is too hard, did it because of mindset. You work it and it'll work for you. So, what we then learned about, and you could see that to a degree on the log, we really had to figure out what we were thinking, what we were doing, and why we were doing it. And so the main part of what Dr. Goldner put her time and attention in every day, we were 6 weeks together. Every day, she had anywhere from maybe 4 to 8 and sometimes more videos that we would watch in the day that would have something to do with probably how we're feeling, what we're thinking at that time. And she is a board certified psychiatrist. So you have an MD, someone who is a expert at cellular recovery. Her husband is an expert at metabolism. And between the two of them, they found a protocol that healed her and that will heal us if we just pay attention. So, who's this little cutie? He was the teeny baby that was with us in October, when we were in New Mexico at Halloween. Yeah, this is Walker. He's now, oh gosh, a year and a couple of months. He was born January, I believe it was 17th. And she is pregnant with a girl. Yay, the first girl grandchild that is in the family for, well, the longest time. There are no girl grandchildren. And we've got a girl coming in September. Yay. Okay. So this is where she put her time and attention every day. This is where we put our time and attention every day. Self-care, bliss, mindset. What is that about? In self-care, we were told that this program would only work if we learned to replace reward from food with activity, whether it's mindset activity, movement activity, things like resistance training, walking in nature, being with friends or family, doing fun things, playing games, having a massage, fragrant bath, travel, journaling, something besides food to give us a high. And then what were the bliss points? I found bliss points on my bike when I cycle almost every morning. As a matter of fact, it's almost an addiction. I go to a river bottom trail, which is within, gosh, 10 minutes of me, just riding right out of my driveway. And just being out there in the air, in the light, first thing in the morning, sets me up for a good day. That to me is bliss. You'll see some other examples of bliss. So let me go on. And then what is mindset? What is she talking about? Mindset is being able to express gratitude when other people are expressing disappointment or fear or criticism. Learning meditation effectively. She has a number of really good meditation methods that she walked us through. Love languages, learning what our love language is and the love languages of the people we care about, because that helped us connect on an even ground. Inner child work, boy, did I need that. Anyone who has read my book knows that things were a little bit difficult really early on. And I thought all of that and the expression of it, negative expression of it, was gone, not even close. Forgiveness is one of the most important things that we learned how to do and how to do well. How to do hard things. She would say again and again, things aren't always going to be easy. And you'll see a saying that one of her patients said to her, and I wrote it down because I thought it was so good. That'll be later. Prioritizing sleep and past trauma resolution. All of this was where most of our time and attention went in our 6-week rapid recovery group. So a thought sheet, and this is part of what she taught. We were asked again not to share their materials, but in a general way, this is what the thought sheet was. It's very similar to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. When my husband passed away, I married him at 19. I was almost 60 when he died. We were 40 years married. And I was terrified of who I would be, what I would be, if I could even get along without this man who was so capable. And hospice, he was on hospice, home hospice for 7 months. He died of esophageal cancer at home. I'm sorry. Anyway, and that was 15 years ago, and it still makes me cry. Um, I was taught cognitive behavioral therapy, and it made a huge difference. And so I saw similarities here. We were asked to identify and modify negative thought patterns and behaviors. So when we were struggling with a thing, we would be reminded, go back to your thought sheet. It was called something slightly different, but go back to your thought sheet. And in general, you can come back to this slide and watch this and just freeze frame it or screenshot it. You take your situation or your trigger, describe a specific event or situation that led to distressing thoughts or emotion. What are the thoughts? Identify identify the initial thoughts or images that come to mind in response to the situation. And on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your mood regarding that? Number 3, the facts. List the facts that support your thoughts. That this may be true. Number 4, fact evaluation. List the facts that do not support those thoughts. And number 5, come up with a balanced view. What is a balanced thought that takes all facts into consideration? Reevaluate your conclusion. What would a knowing and positive person say about the situation now, and on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your mood? I found that when I have done, well, I haven't remembered to do this that much, but I learned it again in rapid recovery group, and I have applied it and again in my, well, even home situation. And then detox. People hear about this. I thought, oh, come on, whole food plant-based, going on 7 years. And I did a 6-week program in September. There's not going to be any detox necessary for me, emotional as well as physical detox. Well, that was me. I had my first meltdown within 2 weeks because, well, I believe if you've heard me before, you know I have some learning disabilities. I have ADHD as well as dyslexia and, well, some learning disabilities. And I couldn't get my log sheets right. I would get low scores and the zeros. In other words, if you didn't do a thing fully, you got a 0, as opposed to, oh, well, we'll just grade you 1 to 10. No, you don't have your water all the way up there, down to the ounce. It's a 0. You don't have your food down to my 24 ounces. It's a 0. That just set me off. Talk about unfinished childhood trauma. It just set me off. So in the middle of the night one day, I woke up, went to my log book, and started counting zeros. I'm crying my eyes out. My husband wakes up, and I didn't go back to sleep. My husband then wakes up. I'm sitting in my office crying. What's wrong with you? I'm not good enough. I can't do this right. And then I took a walk. It was a rainy morning, and I took a walk, and I purposely went to an area, and I was a landscape designer here. I did it professionally for 15 years. Nanscapes was the name of my company. And I went to an area of finer homes, walked, where I had designed three houses, the landscapes of three of these houses on this block 10 years ago. And I just stood there in the rain, crying, looking at my garden, saying, see, I can do things right. Anyway, where did that lead back to? This right here, a 3-year-old kid. Our parents, my dad walked out on us at 3, 4, and 5. I was the 4-year-old. This was the 3-year-old ready for the trauma. And then things and things and things as they progress through childhood. And it was Dr. Goldner who was able to hear what I said, respond appropriately, and then give me, remember what I said earlier, you've got a challenge, you got a thing that you're working on. Well, what is your plan to fix it? And she gave me, whoops, she gave me a plan, and I'll show you what that is a little bit later, or maybe I mentioned it, um, that I was to come up with at least on our celebration sheet, at least 5, yeah, I think I mentioned this, 5 things a day that I did right, that I was proud of, that I was excited about, and maybe that I was grateful for. Okay, this is Thomas. Thomas, when he asked Dr. Goldner, and she was a doctor then too, to marry him, she had to get honest and she said, yeah, but I have lupus. And this is what lupus is. I can't have your kids. And I'll probably be on dialysis and chemotherapy. And I don't know that I'll live past 30. And this is the most romantic thing. He said to her, I'd rather have you for a few short years than have anybody else for a lifetime. Isn't that beautiful? So go, Thomas. In any case, he was the one that healed her, and he didn't even mean to. So they were going to get married, and she said, we're going to Hawaii. I'm going to have this pretty little white dress, and I want to look really small for it. And, or I want to get in shape or whatever. She wasn't overly heavy. And he put her on this miracle metabolism program. By then, he was working with stars in Hollywood, and he had his gym where people would go knowing they would get healthy, a healthy plan to then get shredded and to lose body fat quickly and to look great. Well, she did. 3 months later, they got married. She looked phenomenal. She was told she could never have children a few years into it. She had her first son, Solomon, and that wasn't supposed to be able to happen. The lupus was supposed to come back if she did, and it never did. And then she had Alec, and that's when they said, you know what? The only thing we changed here was the way I ate. Maybe that is a miracle. And they experimented with other people, a number of people, I believe over 100 people got well, and that's when they started putting information out for free. Smoothie shred and things that she did online, etc. Now, who's that and what's she doing with the mask on a riding trail? Well, that was me. This is my bliss. That bike has a rack on the back because I stop at a store that's like a fruit and vegetable market, and I'm always loading up to go back home in the morning. They open at 8 or 8:30, just after they've gotten back from Los Angeles and filled their trucks up on 3 days a week. Well, why do I have the 50 SPS mask? That should give you a hint, because once you fry your face, you can't be in the sun. And I mean that laser treatment. It's called CO2 laser, if you want to know. It just goes down pretty deep, and then it just, your whole face shreds off. Um, and did it take wrinkles with it? I thought it would, but no, they're still there, darn it. The that is a wide brim hat that I wear under my helmet, so it keeps sun that way away, but you can see it would still have been on my lower face. And that is part of the hat. I bought it like that from Amazon, that snaps in, and that's a 50 SPF cloth. And I ride like that now. I Don't care what I look like. I'm still out there on my bike with my water. And what I've been doing while I've been talking to you very surreptitiously is continuing to ride. This is under my desk, and this is a QB. Love this little thing. I can set the resistance, and while I do my support groups, I did one this morning for an hour and a half. In the background, you're getting this as a video recording, but in the background, I have a group, my PowerPoint group, and they're waiting for me to come on and we'll discuss this or anything else that they want to discuss. Well, I'm not sitting here and not doing anything. So I keep my body moving. That keeps the lymphatic system going. It's good for the hips and the hamstrings and just makes me feel like I'm not just sitting like like, well, like someone who just sits. Leave it at that. Part of my bliss comes in the form of family. There's the little baby right there that you just saw. And she, as I said, is expecting again. This is my grandson, 14 years old. There's Tim. That's my son, 47. His wife, about the same age. And this is the little one who is 3 years younger than his brother. And that was Easter of last year, not this year. Well, no, we haven't hit Easter, but, and this is the one in New Mexico. This one, um, Sammy, is, we were up in the mountains here, and that's Tim with Sammy. And this is Judy. Judy was 90 years old there. I've known Judy since I was 28. We were in a Tupperware company together with my mentor. I mention all of this in the book and what that mentor did to guide me for the rest of my life. Well, Judy was in the company and she was someone we all admired. I was at that mentor's home where she had an event. Judy was there. Here's Judy at 106. Judy just passed away about 2 months ago, but we celebrated her 106th birthday. This is what lifestyle as medicine can do. No, she wasn't whole food plant-based, but she exercised up until, well, she had a stroke shortly before her 106th birthday, and it became too tenuous for her to walk. But she did so much right, and it showed. So, what are other things that can bring me happiness and bliss? You don't really care what brings me happiness and bliss. We all care, including you, what brings you happiness and bliss. I love flowers. A friend of mine brought this to me for Valentine's Day and a late birthday present. I just turned 74 this year in January, and so she brought me the bouquet in honor of both of those. My own flowers in my flower garden. This is called brugmansia or angel's trumpet. I think they're gorgeous. My Meyer lemon tree makes me happy. It's a prolific producer of what I consider a delicious lemon juice. So I'll pick massive amounts of them and freeze them in these, well, in silicone trays of a cup each. And this will last me through the year. I was riding just up from the river bottom, and this egret was walking along as if he owned the sidewalk. He was within, what, 8 feet of me? Whoops, 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 back, back, back. And this is something that makes me happy. Do you know what these are? These are monarch caterpillars. I have plants in my home called Asclepias. The common name is milkweed, and they live off of the leaves. So the monarch will deposit the eggs. Actually, you can see an egg. I don't know if you can see this. Usually they're underneath and they dangle, but right there, that's an egg. And we will get, that may be a chrysalis right there. I'm not sure. But this is the, no, the chrysalis comes after this. Sorry, never mind about that, whatever it is. But the, well, yeah, it could be. Never mind. Go, Nan, go. So this is a monarch caterpillar that will turn into a chrysalis that will turn into a butterfly. And this happens all over my property. And so we have them dancing around all over. And jokes. I love to laugh. I love comedies. What about you? I like to have fun. 5 minutes after you leave the house, the dog is saying, "What if they never come back?" That's a dog for you. Cats say, "Who?" And in a way, that's so true. And this little guy right here reminded me of Sunny. So I had to share it with you because that's my Sunny. She's 6 months old. I got her when she was 7 weeks old and almost dead. She was dumped out of somebody's car on a roadway, and my neighbor scooped her up and asked if I would um, foster her. Well, within 3 weeks, I wasn't fostering, I owned her. And she's a little thing. She's only 5 pounds at 6 months old. I'm left-handed. Left-handers, we're interesting people. But this reminds me to remind you that journaling has a very positive effect on us neurologically. And this is another thing I'm taking away from the 6 week rapid recovery group. I now have begun a journal that I write in rather briefly because I don't spend a lot of time with a lot of things I don't have to, but recounting my day. One of the things that kept me going and kept me spot on during the 6 week recovery group was doing the journal, doing our log sheets, not wanting to disappoint. Well, I would feel the same way if I was doing the same thing for myself and actually having to write that down. So, my most excellent adventure with Dr. G's Rapid Recovery Group, I'm celebrating vibrant health and balance and joy. That's what I promised here in my book. This happens to be the cover that's on the Audible version. It just happened to fit in this space better. My rheumatoid factor is in the normal range. My thyroglobulin antibodies and TSH are down for, well, and are normal. And TSH is down from a high of 489 to 300. That's thyroid stimulating hormone that shows if your thyroid is working, is now normal. The ESR, the erythrocyte sedimentary rate, is 3 points up, but that's possibly due to my spending 6 weeks doing emotional work because it is, and the inflammation in our body is affected by not just our physiology, but also what's in our mind, what's in our emotions, what then affects the adrenals, and possibly due to the laser um, work as well. In other words, growing a new face. H1C, vitamin D, vitamin B12 are all now in a more normal range. I've released old trauma. I've lost 2 pounds. Whoopee. I'm the smallest I've been, well, since I was in high school, I think, but that's not important. If I gain it back, I would be fine with that. And this is the quote that is slightly briefer, but this is what her patient said. It's hard until it's easy. It is hard until it's easy. And you stick in there, and before you know it, anything that's hard can become easy because we break through the mindset, we break through the old habits, and we neuroadapt to the new behaviors. This is what Dr. Goldner said to me on the last day that she communicated with me. Your labs for thyroid antibodies and rheumatoid factor, according to up-to-date research, are normal for a healthy individual. Congratulations. I can say now, goodbye, Hashimoto's. Note, I am still hyper-nourishing on a hyper-nourishing step-down plan. I can't see any reason not to continue doing the smoothies and having that quantity of the healthiest foods that a body can get, and that is the deep leafy green and cruciferous vegetables. Can't see any reason to stop that. And I've decided to audit the next group. What that means is for a much reduced rate, I can still stay on the website. I can still go through the next group. And why would I do that in a different capacity, not continuing to get one-on-one um, uh, evaluations and coaching, but I'm staying on to help me fully apply the knowledge. I learned so much that I realized when we graduated from the website and we're no longer using it, that there's just too much in there, hundreds of videos that I need to want to go back to. So I'm going to say to you, Akantanos, that is from the Icarian Blue Zones area where they say instead of goodbye, they say Akantanos, meaning I'll see you at 100. I want to thank you for joining me on my most excellent adventure. Have a great day because you know what? I'm going to. Bye bye. I'm going to stop screen share. I did that. Oh no. Hold on. I have lost. There we go. And there. Bye bye.